All right, so I'd like to explain our latest power principle. In my coaching activity, I haven't run into anybody that hasn't said, or anybody that said they didn't like it, they couldn't use it, they didn't need it. Although, what I found is it's very difficult to explain how coaching works or why it works. There's video out there by Eric DeKaiser, CEO of Google, about how coaching is so effective and everybody should have a coach, but it still doesn't answer the question, how does it work or why does it work? And I had a conversation with Gary Brown, one of our senior Focal Point coaches, a while back. He's also the chairperson for the strategic advisor group for Focal Point International Coaching. And he shared with me a diagram that he received from a group called the Strategic Coach. So I'm trying to give credit where credit is due. But let me explain how this works and see if this makes some sense to people. And so for everybody that's out there, at any point in time, you have sort of a view or a perspective of what you think might happen, right? And it's a little bit, think of it in terms of a flashlight, right? So if we draw a line in time and we say this is today, right? So t equals 0 or 1, it's today. And everybody sits on this timeline today, right? Everybody has a spot on that particular timeline. And then if we draw another line and we say this represents a time in the future, right? And so this is time t equals n. So I can't draw that a little better, right? And n could be 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 quarter, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever else. It's in the future, right? But from our position right here, we have a view and a perspective of the future. Everybody has one, right? And it's unique and it's different, but we all have one, but it's consistent in one aspect, in the sense that, it looks like, sort of like this, right? This is what we think might be happening, could happen in the future. Now we're going to apply this to business. It could apply to anything, right? But this is what we think would happen in the future, right? And this angle, whatever that happens to be, could be bigger or less. We call that angle A. It could be bigger or less for anybody and everybody. It depends on what their perspective is, their filters, their biases, their truths, what they've learned, what they know and what they don't know, right? It's everything that you have as an individual. So this is true for the entire population and true for everybody that's out there, right? So now the interesting thing that Gary shared with me and that this thing does, he says, okay, now imagine that you're standing on the future line 3 years from now. Let's use 3 years as an example, right? You're standing on the future line 3 years from now, right? And this is kind of our view going out, right? But now we're standing at this point on the future line, right? And when we look back, guess what? We have the same angle. We still have the same perspectives. Now we have some new things that we've learned, right? And so when we look back, it looks like this, right? So that's our view backward in time, right? And what's interesting about this particular thing, and so this particular line right here in the initial view, right? That is, filtered by our perspective. Filtered by, we have filters and we have some bias in there. We have some perspectives and we have some truths. Things that we believe to be true. This is what we think is going to happen. But what happens is when we stand out here at this view here and we look back, right, we realize that there are some things that we learned over the course of time. Some things that, weren't covered in that, right? And that's what is in these spaces right here. These are the things that we couldn't see and didn't know and weren't aware of back on day one when we started with this particular perspective, right? And so when it comes to coaching, what we're trying to do, what the coach is trying to do for anybody, right? And it has nothing to do with whether I know more or am more intelligent or anything else, but the coach then begins to talk about a prescription to uncover these particular spaces sooner, right? Sooner, that's the key. Because if you knew these in the beginning, then the results, and in fact, that's what this is, what's considered up here, this little perspective here, that's the results in terms of business. We talk about money, but that's the results that we think were possibly happening, right? But if we knew this stuff in advance, right, it would impact our results significantly faster, because this is the learning experience that we're going to go through. So when you spend some time with a coach, right, it's all about uncovering this stuff so that I can get there faster. So instead of 3 years from now, we get to this space here a heck of a lot sooner. That's really what we're talking about, is uncovering these things. It's about conversations to uncover these things. And it could be in marketing, and it could be in leadership, and it could be in training, and it could be in delegation, and it could be in clarity, and it could be in any number of things. What the coach does, I don't spend time talking about the stuff that you already know, because that's not really valuable to you, right? The idea that I'm going to try to provide is to figure out what this stuff is, and that's where I start to add a lot of value. That's where the coaching practice, the coaching process, really starts to add a lot of value. And even more amazing than that, at some point, get another color here, when we broaden the starting point, right? So it's no longer this place, right? It's somewhere out here, right? Then what happens is we have the opportunity to generate, right? And we're using roughly the same angle as well as I can draw it, right? To generate greater results, right? And so now our results potential looks like that. And to me, this is the best drawing, this is the best example I've ever found that helps me to understand how does coaching bring along greater results. And it's really based on this little stuff right here. When we uncover that stuff sooner, then we're able to change the view, right? So change your view from this perspective here to a much broader perspective, much broader, more encompassing perspective, so that you have the ability to achieve greater results. The Harvard Business Review put out an article a while back that said, hey, coaching has roughly a 6 to 10 times return on every coaching dollar invested. So if you invest $10,000 in coaching, you should expect to get $60,000 to $100,000 back. Okay, great. That's wonderful. How? How does that work? And I look at it and I say, this is why it works, is because we're having conversations that take that stuff out and create the broader value and give us the better results. So I haven't come up with a name for this principle, but that's it. Thanks.